Hi, I'm Cassie, and today I'm reading part of one of my books that I wrote like a cozy bedtime story. Nothing fancy, I'm not a professional voice actor, I'm not an audiobook reader, I'm an author. And I want to share with you my story, how I would read it. My dog might bark, my kids might laugh in the background, I might laugh at my own characters. And this is simply me hanging out with you, enjoying part of a good story. Yeah. Are you ready? Let's jump right in.
Hey everyone, welcome to a little reading time with author Cassie. I'm so excited for you to join me today when I get to read you the beginning of my second book in my Caught series, Caught in a Snare. I am so excited to share this with you because there is not an audiobook of this as of yet, but it will be fun to give you an opportunity to listen to this book just a little bit in my voice, and I'm excited to share that with you. Just as a note, Caught in the Middle is the first book in the series, and it really is read like part 1, part 2, part 3. So this is part 1 of my Caught series, Caught in the Middle, and I do encourage you to read it first. I will put a caveat, I can't read this one on my channel because of different audio rights and things like that. So I'm not going to be able to read the first chapter of this book, but check it out if you want to understand what's going on with Annie and Sam and this story. And then when you're finished with that one, go ahead and check out Caught in a Snare, which is part 2 of my Caught series. And I'm so excited to read you the first chapter of this again because it doesn't exist in audio in any format. And so this is just kind of extra special for me to share this with you. All right. This is Caught in a Snare by Cassie M. Shields. Chapter 1. Annie hit her steering wheel hard with the palms of her hands, 1, 2, 3 times. She crumpled her resume and tossed it into the back seat of her car. She hated how quickly people blamed her for something she didn't do. One gunshot on an awful night, and now no one would hire her. It's like they blamed her for her ex-boyfriend's murder solely because she stood in the same room. It didn't matter that she hadn't pulled the trigger. Worse than that, she was sick and tired of hearing the words, "I'm sorry." Usually they were harmless words or words that brought positive feelings, but lately she suspected everyone had forgotten what "I'm sorry" was supposed to mean. "We can't hire you. I'm sorry." People gave her hard looks at church, followed by, "The seat is taken. I'm sorry." Sam wasn't available. "I'm sorry." Annie wrenched her steering wheel hard to the right and headed out of town instead of home. As much as she loved Granny, the last thing she needed right now was another lecture about her failed attempts to get a job. A conversation that would ultimately end with those 2 dreaded words and the phrase that usually followed, "Keep trying." Well, she didn't want to keep trying anymore. She didn't want to hear another apology. She wanted her life back, the life she fought so hard to return to. After hitmen hunted her in California during the summer, she figured she'd feel safe and normal in her small Idaho town far away from all that danger. Tears pricked her eyes, but she blinked and forced them back. Annie pressed hard on the accelerator and her small white car zoomed along the curved road beside the green, leafy plants of the potato fields that stretched out until they touched the bright blue horizon before her. The potato plants grew in even rows, bumping over the small hills, which gave them an unending appearance. "This isn't fair, Sam," she yelled through the silence of her car. "Coming home was supposed to be the best thing for me, the right choice, the thing I needed more than anything." Only silence answered. Sam wasn't there to respond. In fact, he hadn't responded to her minimal attempts to reconnect. She hit the accelerator harder to increase her speed. She'd only spent a few weeks with Sam, Jeremy, and the crew, yet she missed them desperately. Sam with his multiple smiles, but only one that was real. Jeremy with his never-ending snack supply. She even missed Reaper, Sneak, Ink, and Crank, who were all criminals, but as far as she could tell, good people. A potato truck rumbled past her, dropping clods of dirt all over the road. 1 or 2 of the newly harvested potatoes slipped out of the mound and landed hard on the asphalt road, but the truck passed her without slowing. Annie turned onto another road and drove until her heartbeat slowed to a regular pace. She'd driven a lot farther than she'd planned, and the edge of the sun hit the tops of the distant mountains, pushing colors of pink and purple into the wispy clouds. Her hands wrung the steering wheel, and she kept a close eye on the darkening sky. A car sped up behind her and honked. Annie jumped and glanced at the speedometer. She was already going 5 miles over the speed limit. The car behind her got closer, riding her tail. Annie sped up a little, but the car kept pace behind her. She passed a small milk farm not far from town. For the briefest moment, she considered pulling over beside the building, but instantly she thought about gunshots in the alleyway. Her breath shortened and her chest burned. She couldn't bring herself to go anywhere alone in the dark. The car honked, inching closer to her bumper. Annie didn't want to risk going any faster, but the one-lane road with ditches on both sides didn't give either of them a lot of wiggle room. The sun dipped behind the distant mountains and twilight settled in around her. "Lord, what do I do?" she prayed, looking for some way out of this. A mile up the road, lights spread out in the middle of a field. The corn maze. Typically, a cornfield like that held no attraction for anyone except in October. Thankfully, at this time of the year, people would fill the place. She quickly turned into the makeshift parking lot, the small, loose pebbles flying behind her, and pulled up to the front near the outhouse-style ticket booth. A line of people stood waiting to purchase a ticket. They were wrapped up to ward off the cold as the sun continued to disappear. Annie breathed in and out slowly, one hand on her heart and the other on her belly, the same technique she used when she woke from nightmares of Italian-speaking crime bosses and guns. Far too many guns haunted her sleep. A horn honked. Annie jumped and looked around. Only then did she realize that her car was slowly rolling backward. She slammed the brakes, jerking to a stop. The small truck she'd almost hit halted behind her. Doors slammed and shouts echoed around her. Someone banged the rear of her car while another person rushed toward the front. Annie's stomach clenched and her hands broke into a sweat. A face barely discernible through the dark glared at her before he smacked the glass on her window. "What are you, blind?" Annie sucked in a quick breath and rolled down the window, but only a few inches, and the cool October air hit her in the face like a hard slap. "I'm so sorry, save it." The young man glared at her. "I don't believe you're sorry, just like I don't believe that you didn't kill Dylan." An image of Dylan's body on the floor flashed through her mind. Annie pursed her lips and took another deep breath through her nose. Why couldn't anyone in this town understand that she had nothing to do with that situation? "That the girl who killed our man Dylan?" asked a second voice. Annie jerked around to see another boy leering at her from the passenger window. Her muscles tightened. Were they surrounding her? "Listen, I didn't kill him. I'm innocent," Annie started. "That's not what we heard," said a third voice. "We heard it was your fault. He died." Another guy around her age joined the first one by her window. Annie couldn't tell much about them, but their voices sounded familiar. In a small town like this, she knew pretty much everyone, and unfortunately, they knew her. "We heard that you got him killed and sold your soul for better hair," said the guy to her right. No, I heard she's bad luck. Anyone who gets close to her dies. We're risking our lives telling her off," said the first guy. He laughed and nudged his friends with his elbow. Their words settled in her gut like a hard piece of grisly meat. Bad luck? She wasn't the one who brought bad luck. She lived through it. Her time in California became one big string of horrible consequences, from her ex-boyfriend Dylan's murder in her living room to the hitman wanting her dead to the failed heist where Sam and his friends had relied on her help. None of that was her fault. If she were bad luck, she wouldn't have helped them pull off their job and put more than one villainous man behind bars. "It's not true," she said. "None of the rumors floating around about me are true. You have to believe me." Of course, that's what you'd say when you're the bad luck girl. The first guy rolled his eyes. "Dylan was our friend. The worst thing he ever did was start hanging out with you. I know my friends and I would love to hear what really happened to him, not the mumbo jumbo the funeral guy made up, wails from his mom, or the wild rumors floating around. Since you're the only eyewitness, it's time you fessed up to the truth." Annie swallowed hard and turned away from the anger spreading across the guy's face. The last thing she wanted to do tonight was recount the why and how Dylan had died in front of her. The guy slapped her window again. "I want to know what happened to my friend. I want to know how he died and why you came home looking like the Queen of Sheba." "I'm not going to talk about it. Please move your car so I can leave." All three guys laughed. "Not until you speak the truth." She looked left and right, but there was nowhere to go. Vans blocked both sides of her car, their truck blocked her from behind, and a wood fence stood in front of her car. "Please leave me alone." "Not happy, mistress of darkness," the guys all howled with laughter. Annie turned her keys and moved her car into reverse. The first guy smacked the hood of her car. "Don't you dare! If you so much as scratch my truck, I'll have you arrested. Just answer the question." Annie closed her eyes to keep the moisture from building. "He got himself killed, okay? I just happened to witness it." "That's it, minx. Ever heard of cow tipping? This is car tipping." The three guys started rocking her car hard. "Stop! Please stop!" Annie cried. She glanced out her rearview mirror to see a couple of girls grinning from the truck. The light from the cab shone down on their faces. They were girls she'd grown up with. They were pointing and laughing and egging their boyfriends on. "Ready to talk, bad luck girl," one of the boys said. "Stop! I'm not explaining anything." Annie hadn't even told her granny everything that happened. She wasn't about to share all the gory details with a truckload of bullies. "Time to take this up a notch," said the guide on her right. They shoved hard against her little car. Annie held onto her steering wheel and screamed. "Leave me alone!" "Evan, Paul, Gerald, step away from the car," yelled a commanding voice. A bright light shone in her eyes. The guys stepped away, stifling snickers. Annie sat frozen in her seat. All three of those guys had gone to high school with her. They'd ignored her as much as they could, like most kids back then. But they'd respected Dylan. Sheriff Higby pointed to the sidewalk, and the guys stumbled over to the spot. "I don't know what you boys are thinking, but that kind of behavior is harassment. It's not funny. Small things like this lead to bigger things, and one or all of you will end up spending time in jail." Sheriff Higby strode up to Annie's window. The guy named Evan stepped forward and jabbed his finger in her direction. "It's not harassment if she deserves it. She nearly ran her car into us. She tried to take us out just like when she murdered Dylan Collins. She isn't a damsel in distress. She is the cause of this. If you want to arrest someone, arrest her for murder." Annie's breath stilled in her throat at the very idea that they thought her capable of such a horrific, dark deed. How could they not know she'd never do something like that? Didn't they remember that they grew up with the same Christian values? Sheriff Higby placed his fists on his hips. "Listen here, boys. I read the police report, and this girl is not responsible for what happened to your friend." "Sure, take her side because she's a hot babe now," muttered Paul from the group. "I'm not taking a side. I'm stating a fact. It was my duty to follow up on what happened to that young man, and I can tell you that Detective Price, who was first on the scene, assured me Annie was as much a victim then as she is now. Get back in your truck and leave before I cite you boys for harassment." They held up their hands and huffed off toward their truck, climbed in, and peeled out of the parking lot. Little rocks bounced off her truck. The sheriff leaned in close to Annie's window. "Are you staying or leaving, Miss Gray?" Annie forced one word past the lump in her throat. "Leaving." He stepped back. "Remember to keep an eye on your rearview mirror in the future. You're clear to go." He waved for her to move. Feeling somewhat numb, Annie pulled the gear shift to the R and reversed. She moved her car back onto the road and continued driving into her small town. The problem with keeping the disguise Sam had given her was that it brought her unwanted attention. She let her blonde hair return as the light brown color faded, but kept up Sam's fancy haircut, used the makeup Verica had insisted on, and wore the clothes Sam had bought her. Instead of showing up to church dressed in an outfit from a thrift store, like she had her whole life, she wore things much more befitting her rich girl cover story in LA. People stared at her the first week after she arrived home as if she were a prized ham at the fair. Unfortunately, unwelcome whispers started the moment Dylan's body was returned to his parents, and rumors about her began only a few minutes later. Dylan's funeral felt more than a little awkward. She hoped the whispers would have died by now, but apparently not. "You're bad luck." Annie shivered as the words settled in her skull, as if etched to the bone. Is that the real reason people wouldn't hire her? They thought she'd bring them bad luck? Before her misadventure in California, those guys wouldn't have given her the time of day. They wouldn't have even stopped to scare her. Annie rubbed the goosebumps on her arms. She hit her heater button, but the warm blast of air did little good. not when the real cold and dark feeling resided deeper. She pressed her hand to her chest, a familiar pain throbbing inside, and kept her eyes on the road until the lights of her small town drove away most of the darkness. There you go. Chapter 1 of Caught in a Snare, which is the second part after Caught in the Middle. So a lot of the references to California that you heard in this first chapter refer to this book. So that's why I do recommend that you read Caught in the Middle first before Caught in a Snare. But I hope that you enjoyed this little reading of the first chapter of Caught in a Snare and that you'll go and check it out. It's available on Amazon and Cedar Fort, and Caught in the Middle is available on Amazon and Deseret Book. And I hope that you check them out and enjoy them. And thank you so much for joining me for a little reading time with author Cassie. We'll see you next time. Bye.